Hi, so for our next grammar section, we're going to be focusing on the clauses and phrases. So let's recap. Remember, a sentence is also called an independent clause. It has a subject, a verb, and it's a complete thought. Here's an example. Robert excels in the classroom. We have a subject and we have a verb. This is an independent clause. This is the most basic sentence you can get. In fact, it's so basic, it's called a simple sentence. Now, if you take two of these simple sentences, two of these independent clauses, and you put them together, for example, Robert is not a great athlete, comma, but he excels in the classroom. So here we have two subject verbs. So we have one subject here, verb is, and it's hooked up with another independent clause. He is the subject, he excels is the verb. Now, this, when you have two independent clauses put together, this is called a compound sentence. And in this case, it's connected with a comma and a but. So a comma and a fanboy, if you know those coordinated conjunctions. We'll talk about more about those later, but two independent clauses put together is called a compound sentence. One independent clause is called a simple sentence. So those are independent clauses. You also have something called a dependent clause. This, it might have a subject and a verb, but it's not a complete thought. And dependent clauses always start with subordinate conjunctions, or you might know them as awubis words. Here are just a few subordinate conjunctions, awubis. So after, as, although, when, while, until, because, before, if, and since. So if you see something starting with any of these words, you know it's a dependent clause. Look at this example. Because he regularly studies. So because is my a wubbis word I see there. So I have an independent clause after Robert excels in the classroom. That's my independent clause. And you have this a wubbis word starting it off. If the dependent clause is first, you have to have a comma. Okay. If you flip it, look, I flipped it. Robert excels in the classroom because he regularly studies. So again, I have my subject verb and my wubbis is now in the second half. You don't put a comma if the dependent clause comes second, guys. Okay. And this type of sentence is called a complex sentence. You also have something called a phrase. Now, a phrase is also not a complete thought, but phrases don't start with the wubbis words, right? They are just start with whatever word. So, for example, hoping his mother would arrive. The way it is now, that's a fragment. But if you attach an independent clause, it becomes an independent clause with a phrase as an opener. So this is opening this independent clause. Hoping his mother would arrive, comma, Robert paced impatiently. That's good. That's correct. Here's another example of a phrase. Picnic basket in hand. Well, that's a fragment, right? But if you turn it in, if you attach it with an independent clause, it becomes a phrase. So picnic basket in hand, comma, she set off for her date. So now we have an independent clause with a phrase. Notice these don't start with a wubbis words. Hoping isn't a wubbis word, and picnic isn't a wubbis word. This is called a phrase. Okay. This is actually called a gerund phrase because it has an ing word, but that's something else. And that is correct. Okay, guys, we're going to talk more about this in class. Hopefully, with practice, this will come easy. Okay, thanks.